So we strayed a little bit from the politics, though. Do
Yeah.
you want to come back to that?
Yeah, I don't mind coming back to it, even though I am a political junkie. I've gotten into politics, to tell you the truth, is because I found that without being able to know the players in the community, it's really hard to get anything done, you know. And going back to my days in the district government, I used to work. I was an urban planner in the district government, and there was a street in D.C. over in the Anacostia area, and it was called Morris Road. The road went it was this main thoroughfare in the community. And this neighborhood, when I came back from Vietnam, this neighborhood housing services was going national. So then they had a branch of it in D.C. And so I was able to persuade my supervisor to let me work with neighborhood housing services because they were helping to get it started. And so then over in the community, in the Anacostia community, we had some community people that were on the board. And they kind of poo-pooed everything. They said, oh, you all can't do this, you can't do this. You know, they were just saying what couldn't be done. And I said, well, Miss Matthews, the lady's name was Matthews, and she, at that time I thought she was very older, but she had lived in this house. Her mother had lived in the house. So this house was very old in the neighborhood. And she said, I tell you what, if you all can widen Morris Road, then you all have done something. Because Morris Road had been a thoroughfare when when cars come down the street, they were on one side, they have to almost like park. They would have to pull over to the side and let the cars come by, and then you go. You know, it was that narrow. And the buses.
I'm going to send you over to Woodbridge.
Yeah, and the buses was something at Rumsco. And so then, what I did was, banking on my experience in Pittsburgh, we had to get the names and addresses and the permission of all the homeowners, all the property owners, in order to take a portion of the street to widen it, to do that. And they, from what I told, they've been trying to do that for 30 years. They were trying to, it would come on and off, you know, on and off, on and off. And so then what I did was, I mean, I hate to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but what I did, we got the street widened. And the way we got it widened, that we had a public hearing, and the way we had to, because I said the first thing you got to do is get the community behind it.
Right.
So we organized a public hearing whereby we had people from the city council, the Department of Public Works. We had all the players to come out to the community and talk about it. We had people who were church people, you know, all sorts of people.
Was it a large area?
Yeah, it was a pretty large area. Yeah. It was pretty big over in Anacostia area of southeast Washington, which was considered sort of like one of the more wanting areas in the city. So one thing led to the next, and being, I would say, naturally kind of conservative, I wanted to figure out a party. I wanted to figure out which political party represented what I thought was the best, at least for me. And so I gravitated to the Republican Party, because actually when I was 11 years old back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, my relatives, back in those days, they had a pretty viable business community in the black community. Even it was during the segregated period back in the mid and late 50s. It was segregated, but we didn't know I didn't know anything about segregation, because everything I can get was right there. Well, you know, what was no big deal, you know. Right. And so, but relatives were working on the re-election campaign of Dwight Eisenhower, you know. And because he was at that time, you know, I don't know if you heard of they were integrating some of the schools in the South, like was one in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, that, you know, different things was going on, and Eisenhower sent the troops in to help pave the way for that, you know.
It's hard to believe that's in our lifetime, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And so they kind of liked Eisenhower because of that, and plus being in the military, we kind of like that military background. So I've always been attracted to the Republican Party. And then as I got older, it kind of really disturbed me that most of the blacks voted Democrat. And if you ask them why they vote Democrat, they say, "Oh, they're for government programs." You know, they're for government programs. I say, "You want a government program?" I said, "A government pro." I would kind of scoff at it. I said, "A government program? I don't want no government program. I don't want the government to do such and such and such." You know, and then.
Do you find that still true today?
Somewhat. Some of it is true, because a lot of the quote-unquote black middle class owe that to the government programs. You know. the average, and I hate to say this because I may be considered a hypocrite because I work in the federal government, but many people, if it was up to me, you hear about dismantling government or making it smaller. I would have a good job at that. I would love to go in with a meat axe and just chop, because I see so much waste and everything. And I said that a lot of these people that got these jobs in the government create situations whereby they can do that same kind of work, but let it be done by the private sector. Now, in Washington, D.C., for an example, why should the government have to go around collecting garbage? They got these big trucks and things, D.C. government trucks and garbage collecting. Do like they do.
Do they do it cheaper? First of all, is that part of their taxes?
Yeah, you pay taxes for that. You know what I mean?
And is it cheaper to pay the government to do that, or does it cost them more? Does it cost the
citizen
more?
The citizens don't pay to have their trash collected because the government collects it through the public works. You know,
But they pay a tax.
Yeah, they pay a tax. But see, when you pay a tax, sometimes people don't think they're paying anything.
Oh.
You know, I mean, when you pay a property tax, taken out of your mortgage or whatever, a lot of people who are renters, they don't see it because they pay rent. They don't know it. They think they're not paying any tax. You know? But I'm saying that, to me, I would create entrepreneurs so that it may be in little different sections of the city, this ABC trash collection collects its trash over here. And then you create some competition, you know. But in D.C., you got the government does so many things that there's no...
Well, what would you say in Prince William County we could streamline? What could we eliminate? And to make government smaller in Prince William County, what would you consider?
Well, what I would consider, the first thing I would probably do, when you look at the fact that the educational budget, or the spending on education, I think is the major part of where the most of the money, tax money goes.
Close to 50-some%,
I think, isn't it? That's the first thing I do. I would almost reduce the bureaucracy. I believe in maybe privatizing as many things as possible. I think we can do a better job at privatizing education. I mean, why does the government maybe way back in the 1700s or 1600s it was good, but you have people now that you have retired military, you have retired school teachers that are still vibrant and everything. Let them be involved in teaching and doing things cheaper. I would pay, I don't know what the teachers get, but I would pay them a decent enough salary so they would be committed to teaching. I was on my way into here. I would call my mother up, who's 94 years old, and I was telling her where I'm going. I was talking on the cell phone while I was in traffic. And so I was saying, Mother, she's a retired school teacher, you know, and I said, Mother, isn't it something that you've been retired longer than you were working? You know, she's been retired longer, and her income from her retirement is about twice what she was getting when she was working, you know.
Oh my gosh, really?
Almost twice, not quite, but almost twice what she was getting when she was working. And so she said, because we were talking about the young people, how hard it is for them to get jobs, and sort of feeling sorry for them. And she said, my advice today was, don't go into education. She said, I wouldn't be a teacher if you gave me $1 million, you know. And then I said, why? She said, it's because of the bureaucracy, you know.
It does seem to be a lot of chiefs for the number of Indians.
And I would say that bureaucracy that you see in the educational system actually can be applied all over government. It's just too much bureaucracy, you know. To do one thing, you got 10 different people you got to go to, and it's almost like everybody wants to protect their little turf, because if you don't come to them, then they'll think they won't have anything to do, and they're afraid that they're going to...
Well, then how do you feel about the parks and... It's now called Parks and Rec.
Yes.
It was the Park Authority, and they had an independent board and a Citizens Advisory Board. And now they've been kind of rolled in under Public Works.
I think that was a good idea from what I read. I'm not a part of the inner workings of that, but from what I read, I think it was good, because maybe some of the administrative thing, whatever they were doing, whatever that park authority had administratively in terms of their staff and what is it, dealing with payroll and this, that, and a lot of the back office type things, they can just pull that, maybe not pay any, they don't have to have an extra person to do it, but just how many people they had, about a couple of hundred maybe, I don't know how many people on But that same,
So they're not redundant.
yeah, so they're not redundant. Yeah, make it so it's not redundant. That's what I would do. And then another thing I would do, and I know people may not like this, but you look at some of these police cars. These police, I bet they're about, what is it, 80, what, 70s, or what 50? I mean, I don't know how much they cost, but I look at the,
I believe it's more like 100.
I figure that with all the equipment inside
Yeah.
of it. I mean, what do they really do that needs all that? I would say that maybe if they're going to, why do they need that kind of car to give people parking tickets or to give someone who's in the HOV lane to, to write them a ticket?
Well,
That's
really, there's
beside the
very
speed.
few people doing parking
Yeah,
enforcement.
yeah. Maybe I shouldn't say parking, but I'm talking about traffic-related type things. Maybe I was being a little bit trite when I said that, but I meant non-violent crime type stuff, And then you see these.
Have you ever gone on a ride-along?
I know you have. I think I read about it once.
It's amazing.
I know they got all that inside the vehicle.
Oh yeah, I don't know how there's room for the officer in there because he's got a computer and he's got he's got a whole bunch of stuff in there. You just have to squeeze in. But he was handling all of it.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting. But it gives you a whole different perception of.
Maybe I would change my mind, I guess.
I think you might.
Maybe. Do they have to have all? I mean, does each person need that kind of? Maybe it's depending on their role, I guess. Maybe
I don't
they
know.
have a squad.
Here's the way I
something.
look at it. Way back when it was before Rudy Giuliani, who was the mayor in New York before Rudy Giuliani, whoever it was.
Was that Dinkins or something?
No, I don't think so. They were having a terrible, terrible crime rate. Murder rate was the highest in the nation. And whoever that mayor was said, okay, well, we are going to enforce the law. We're going to, if you spit, we're going to cite you. If you curse, we're going to cite you. If you do graffiti, we're going to cite you. Litter, we're going to cite you. And all of the officers were upset because it was so much paperwork.
That they had to do.
Right.
That, yeah.
And they had to take those offenders and take them back to jail and book them, and then they were stuck in the office. And so now officers on the street have all that in their vehicle. So it does save them a lot of time. They don't have to go back to the jail unless they have a prisoner to physically remand. But in New York, they outrigged a big van, bigger than a van.
Yeah, I know one of these big mobile type.
Exactly.
Office, so to speak.
Glad you know what I'm talking about.
Mobile.
And they had fingerprinting stuff in there, and everything that you would find in the office they had inside this van. So,
Well, something like that could be good because it's not like you had a van for every officer, But I'm talking about these police cars. You see one for almost every person has one of these big police cars, and maybe you can have them so that two people shared a car or something like that. But I'm just against government waste, and I see a whole lot of it, from excess office space, maybe, that's even a problem.
okay, well, I'm going to wind you down here. So,
okay.
you have something you want to close up with?
Well, let me see. In terms of what? In terms of the politics or the community? I would say that I would like to see people, you had talked about young people. I think young people today, like you said, they may be given a bad rap, but I think that we need to highlight them more, the positive things that they're doing. And in terms of schools, I think there are a lot of students who are really trying to excel, and I think we need to just give them more encouragement and let them see that if they do good, you'll get rewarded. A lot of them don't think they'll get rewarded by doing the right thing.
I think the biggest thing we can do is just spend time with them. If there's so many single parents, families, or so many families where both parents are working and they don't have time to spend with the kids. We went, as the Optimist Club, we went to read to children one day. And I think mentoring and those places where kids are missing that guidance, especially here, because so many are transient and you don't have that support system of your grandparents and aunts and uncles around you. That's probably the best thing we could do.
Well, in that regard, have you seen how older people really like little kids? And have you noticed that? I would like to see them sort of way you can combine, have a senior center inside of an elementary school, some kind of way. I know you have to work out the mechanics of it, but do that, because I remember I went someplace and this young boy, he was a toddler and everything, and he didn't have a father, was no parent in the household, he was a toddler, and to me, I just thought it was just something else to see a toddler with no father in the house. I sort of wonder how did they get the toddler come with no father in the household. But anyway, but the kid just grabbed onto my leg and everything, like he didn't want to let go. He just looked up to me, and I looked at those eyes and everything, and I said, oh, if I could afford to adopt. You could see he was clinging on to me, and as if maybe he thought I was his father or something, or he wanted me or something like that,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the kids who get in trouble, they probably, maybe it's a manifestation of not being, like you said, given attention to. And you take all these nice nonprofit organizations we're involved in, I think that we should probably try to match these kids up that in the juvenile detention, maybe make part of their service, part of their service to be, maybe they have to come to a Committee of 100 meeting about what we're talking about, or maybe to the Optimist Club and listen, because now I'll just say this, and I have to go. I know you're not going to like what I say, but
we can edit that out.
You edit this out, But my wife, who tends to be kind of negative, and so then I told her to read. I said, read the Optimist Creed, and I even Xeroxed, and everybody that I know that's somewhat negative, I give them the Optimist, and I even gave it to my mother, who's 94 years old, but yet she wants to know how come if she has aches and pain, why me? I said, well, Mother, you've lived longer than everybody else, and she can walk. At 94, she can walk up the steps with no cane and no crutches. I mean, and she cooks her own. I mean, So I see a lot of people that wonder how come they're in. You know what I mean? Why me? Like they're the one.
Yeah.
And I say, well, read this right here. Read the Optimist Creed.
Be grateful for what you have. Sure.
Be grateful for what you have. So that would be, maybe we need to talk to Sheriff Glendale Hill, or talk to some of our legislators like Rich Anderson, somebody who can come. They have to be worked out the kinks, but I just think, especially in the D.C. area, we have too many educational type organizations. Even this group here, even this set up enterprise you have here, maybe some young person their age, a little younger, who's got a little bit of trouble, and he may come here and see all these bells and whistles. You'd be surprised how that may turn them around. Maybe that may be something to look at.
Gave us a lot to think about.
Yeah, maybe the Optimist Club to use that as a project, huh?
Might be, do that. We might.
We might. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming. I had a nice conversation. Nice. We could do that again. Yeah, probably all day long.
All day long, yeah.
And I'd like to thank all our viewers for joining us tonight. Please, if you would like to come for an interview with us, we would love to have you. If you look right down at the bottom of your screen, you should see the information to contact us. And we'll see you next week when our guest will be Gina Hilton.